Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with John Paul Rice, a film producer. Tell me about that.
Hey, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I came out of Hollywood after 19 years there in the city of Los Angeles, having worked on Remember the Titans, We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, and went into the film industry as an actor and ended up becoming a film producer, which a lot of people don't really know. They know about directors and actors and that sort of thing. What I did was I went out and raised money and gathered people and resources together to create a vision around a script and a director that I shared a vision with creatively, and put all of those together. So I did 7 of those in 14 years, all different social issues that are much different than the ones that Hollywood covers. And I worked in the business aspect of it in sales, finance, marketing, and distribution. So I got to learn the behind the scenes, how every deal is structured, international distribution. I also worked in the banking industry. And so I got a whole school for 19 years out there in Los Angeles. And what I really loved about it was the fact that you could tell stories, and stories that gave people feelings that were deep within them, but had never been experienced before. And something in that movie, something in that story that they saw something in themselves there that spoke to them, and it changed them. And that's the magic of film on the whole when it's done right.
Wow. And were there any films that were a little unusual?
Yes, not ones that I made, but when I went out there, I was a young man at about 22, 23 years old. I got invited to be an extra in the background for some money, $7,500 cash that day, to work on a porn. Now, I wasn't an actor in the porn. I was just at these scenes where there wasn't any sex being had, but they intercut them with the storyline. And I got to see what really goes on the set of a porn film from beginning to end of day, and meet the actors and meet the crew and meet the extras. And it showed me something that was different than what the finished product presents itself as.
What would people be surprised that's different than the finished product?
Well, for starters, the 2 people that were working in the scene, a man and a woman, um, they're in their 20s. And she was a star from Britain that they had brought over. So they paid for her flight and her stay, and then the fee. Neither one of them, like including the guy, he hated doing this. He wanted to get out. And he was a famous person in that time frame of the early 2000s. He was a name male actor. It was just like one of the things that was like a bane of his existence. So he wasn't really, and he was a famous guy and he was fit, so it wasn't like he had nothing not going for him. What I also saw was how technical it is and not the connecting parts of sex. So it was almost like you had to do things like a robot, and there was no feeling involved. And when you're talking about, having a 250 or 500-watt light on you and all these strangers standing around you, and you have to be naked and stay active and full to deliver on, the shot that they need, and the being able to do the thing on cue, that's the part where it just blows your mind. And it's a job. It's strictly a job. It has nothing to do with the experience that the end user is going to have. And obviously that is why they make the films they do, in order to get the result that they do, which is the addiction and consumption of it. But if you were to go from one end to the other, you basically would have to, suspend your disbelief and realize that the people that you're inserting yourself into in that movie are in fact not in love, not caring of each other, not that they're horrible people, but that they're traumatized people that are trying to create the illusion of connection, the illusion of fantasy that doesn't actually exist in real life, both for them or the end user that's attempting to gratify themselves that way.
For the fakeness of everything, did people feel it on the set, or everybody was so used to it, the crew?
Yeah, I mean, I got to meet different people in the crew, and while it's a sample size, I think most people, it's sort of a benign thing. It's this is a job. I'm a camera person today working on the set of this movie. I'm getting paid money. Tomorrow I'll be over here shooting this. It's just one thing to the next. So it's not, if I were to really contemplate it deeply, everybody knows there's BS involved, right? Everybody knows there's BS involved, not just in the production of it, but in the whole industry, from production to distribution and all the people that you have to deal with in between in order to quote, make a living out of it, or being able to survive it. And the personalities that you encounter are not the traditional ones that you would necessarily, I mean, you could say, well, yeah, of course, because that's a porn star, but they're human beings too. I got to know them, not just from that, but being in Hollywood for 19 years. There were DVD release parties for porn earlier in the early 2000s. You'd get invited to those. You'd meet some of them. A couple of them became my friends. So I got to see them off camera, and one of the girls, thank God, got out of it and went back home and started a life and has a child now. But that's the part of it, is a dehumanized industry. And it doesn't account for your feelings or your real emotional issues that are going on. When you have a contract you've signed and people are expecting, it doesn't matter that you're sick, you're going to perform, so that we can get the shot. And we'll cut around whatever we have to, or put as much makeup on. I mean, I'm sure there's been, well, I can't say I'm sure. I'm certain that people have addressed these grievances many times before and tried to get reforms in the industry, and maybe they've made strides, but the ultimate thing is that all of this attachment is from an abusive, trauma-based industry that normalizes sex that is false. And when you're talking about the crews and everybody else, it's not like they're sitting there doing, evil things in their heads about it. It's just that they don't know what they're doing. They only know what they know, and that's what they know. Otherwise, I mean, this is nobody's plan A in life.
Yes.
Right? It's not what you dream of doing when you're 5 years old. And the people that tell you that, I wouldn't sit there and say that they're horrible people, but you could only imagine the kind of childhood where that, for which doing those things, where you're selling your body and your image and your persona as a product to gratify yourself with, go to conventions and have stalkers and have to get restraining orders, having abusive boyfriends or female partners too that are abusive. You don't contemplate all of that when you go into it. This is where dissociative disorders come in. It's where a lot of people condemn and persecute these individuals, not realizing that there were many, many, many moments before that occurred that you didn't see as to why they're there. And you can call it choices, but here's what I tell people. There is a difference in the choices one has if you're born into a horror film versus a love story. And those people born in a horror film are trying to get to the love story, but they don't know how to because they're very damaged and they had lack of boundaries that were healthy in childhood and everything that was surrounding them. You don't know the parents checked out or not. That's their mom and dad. That's the one they know. That's the person who loved them and could have totally mind controlled that child and indoctrinated them through their narcissism. And that child will not know the difference that its mother or father or both put them in a position that would make them desensitized to abuse.
Mm. Is there a cause?
Is there a cause? Well, I
This
think it's
dehumanization on set.
yes, there is. There's a root cause to it. It goes. You can go in many different ways to look at it, but here's what it is, in my view. The violation of the child's body is violence. What I mean by that is at the very beginning of your life, before you even have emotions fully formed and developed, you have sensations. And those sensations in the child's body are joy, they're bliss. There is discomfort, yes, when the child's hungry, when the child is tired, when the child has to use the restroom, it's experiencing something that's bothering it. But pretty much it's a state of eternal joy in the heart, which is love. This is before the brain of thoughts is even formed. So the child is in a like hypnotic, psychedelic state of existence in comparison to what we have today. And everything that is, it's like if you were sitting back and watching a movie that you couldn't pause, rewind, fast forward, or skip, but are 24/7 is called mom and dad, if you're lucky enough to have both of them. And everything that they do, not everything they just do to that child, but everything they do to each other, how they behave, how they act, the ritualized behaviors, the child is observing them, not thinking them, it is downloading them and normalizing in that child. Over time, it's going to scale up from all of the sensory perceptions, the feelings that it develops in relation to what it sees. And the thing is that all we are is love. So pain that's outside of them is love in here. Anything that the child does that displeases the parents as they determine it and define for that child is where they ritualize all of the pain and pleasure together. So when you get into pornography, if you get into exhibition, exploitation of yourself, what you're doing is you're recreating the compulsion. It's a compulsion to repeat the trauma for which you are not knowledgeable, aware of up here, but in the body have retained. And those associations of those sensations affect the perception, for which draws towards it the thing that it thinks it wants according to how it feels, not what it thinks. I always believe that the heart precedes the mind. Your emotional reality is creates your perception, and you can't, in other words, you can't give someone just knowledge and information and expect that they take it exactly the way you understand it, no matter how specific in words you draw out for them, because no one can see or even hear, for that matter, what they do not feel is true and hear. So when you introduce a new belief or an idea to somebody, even with facts, you can't override their emotional reality, because they're going to have to compartmentalize it like they do everything else that they perceive as a threat or something that is helpful to them, hurtful or harmful. But in doing so, they're really denying themselves something as well. And that is based on fear, ignorance, and scarcity. And that is all from a lacking of before. So what we're really talking about here is that what creates this is sexual perversion, bloodline, ancestral traumas that have nothing to do with the exact emotional reality of now, but can be activated and stimulated, synthesized. Pornography is a synthesized abuse. So you don't necessarily have to come from an abusive childhood to be taken in to a child abuse program anymore, especially on screens. When we make those associations and we marry that when we marry that feeling to an experience that we can recall, it reinforces those connections, those distorted connections. So what we're talking about is wiring the body through the mind, in a sense, all that it takes in, and mapping it to our distortions. And we are, and this is all of society, in a sense, if you will. It's not consciously doing this to itself, it's unconsciously acting out these phenomena. It could, and I mean, it goes down to the minutia of glamour, beauty, fashion industries. They are mirrors to us, into us. Now, you can say, well, I'm not interested in the stuff that they promote as fat. That's true. But what I'm saying is that energetically mirroring back to us, for or against, but we're defining ourselves and distinguishing ourselves in and out of those things. And that's false, because it's a reflection of our unconscious behaviors. It's a reflection of our internal states that are expressing themselves back to us, which is what's calling us to go to them or oppose them at the same time. Doesn't mean that you're supposed to be for them if you're against them, or against them if you're for them. What it's saying is that it's a set of false choices. And our inversion of the masculine and feminine in society, which in pornography, it's not just women that this is doing this to. As I kind of talked a little bit before, if they pull Eve in, Adam follows. And in this case, the women, this is the crux of the issue that we're seeing today. If you look at, this is just a little, but this is an anecdotal. If you look at Me Too from 2017 to today, regardless of what your thoughts are about it, regardless of whether you believe it was politicized or not, it doesn't matter. Those were real grievances on the scale that they were announced and discussed. Now, of course, people took it in all sorts of directions. That's why I said, don't worry, don't get into the details of it. The point is that the Me Too movement is in 2017, and in 2022, we've got Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion doing WAP, wet ass, and they're literally saying whores in the house. We've got whores in the house. I mean, this is called, if anybody goes and looks at all of the articles written about this by this music video with the image, you should go watch it. Just sit there and look at the press on all of this and the social media imprinting and impressions and the comments, how empowering that all is to women to be whores. So that's from Me Too to now by the same industry who brought up Me Too and who's also bringing up this other crap. And this cognitive dissonance is not going away because it's internalized paradoxes of our childhoods and picking and choosing the false things that we associate with that are outside of our own authority, and basically saying, define for me, celebrity culture, what it is that I'm supposed to have an opinion on, when they're the least credible people in the world to be delivering that message to you, including issues about race and sex and gender, because all of them come from some of the most traumatized childhoods you could ever not imagine. And it's not their fault that they're controlled and enslaved in that child abuse system. But that's what our world has become, in a sense, a personification of a narcissistic child abuse system. And people are rightfully so standing up and fighting up against it, but they don't see their own role in contributing to the thing that they see outside of them that's different, and chide and persecute and condemn that when in fact we've been on a long history to get here, over decades and centuries, and you could even say thousands of years, because like I said, if you look at ancestral traumas, it's not this, therefore that. It's a set of factors that if it meets these certain thresholds, you're going to have problems. You're going to have a fractured society that is trying to straighten itself out with story and identification and labels. And you ultimately create tribalism in opposition to each other, in the falsehood that you see in somebody else arbitrarily. If you're a this supporter or a that supporter, right? If you're a supporter of this, then you can't be anything good at all. Well, you enable this, and this enables this. And what we're talking about is psychology on a mass scale of mind control, where everyone is picking a side in opposition to some arbitrary thing that has been given to them as an identification for or against an issue. And you can completely discount an entire population of people on that one arbitrary fact. That's how crazy this stuff is. That's where all of this stuff goes. That's what child abuse does to us. It separates us from our spiritual divinity, where what should be an act of sexuality is spiritual. It is a lust, and it's a thing of taking. It's a thing of gratification, desire, and pleasure. Whereas the real pleasure of being alive and feeling full and with a woman that you love, deeper than the desire of her outfit, deeper than the desire, the shape and the contour of her body and her skin and all of that, that's fine. But there's got to be care. That's what's missing in this world. There is a lack of care and vulnerability and openness. And people are going, my God, who can I trust? You have to go to yourself. The person in here that you love is the one you can trust. And the person who loves you in all of the places where no one else knows your deepest secrets, knows your deepest fears, knows your deepest wounds, and loves you in all of those places because they can see beyond that. That's the only thing that can save you. Because, and I don't mean that in absolute terms, but that's the part where we say, okay, I've got me together, but now go be with somebody else. And it's like, no, I can't do that. Right. And that's not a judgment, because I'm 45 years old and I just found the love of my life after seeking it for so long. My childhood was extremely abusive and perverted. And I didn't know that when walking into Hollywood. I didn't know that when going through all of these relationships with women and them turning bad. I had to see my own role in it. Yes, they had really troubled issues. There were some mentally unstable individuals that I dated that I didn't see at first that way, but I also picked them. So it wasn't them doing that to me. And though I was this innocent guy, I had to take account into my own role in what I did unknowingly to hurt that person or cause that person pain. It wasn't meaning that I was responsible for their problems, but I didn't do myself or them any favors because I could see the crazy in them, but not in myself.
Ooh.
And this is where we have to look and face ourselves, because that's really the only thing you have left. We talk about, not us, but people talk about conspiracy theories, talk about rabbit holes to go down. Okay, I'm going to say it one time. The last conspiracy theory to uncover, the last rabbit hole to go down, is the one in you. And explore the depth of yourself and who am I? Why am I here in a world gone insane or heading in that direction? And it's going to get, I don't want to say it's all or nothing going to get worse. It's going to become more of what it is over time. So everything that you're seeing today in the personifications of all the issues that people are debating and discussing, first of all, None of that's going to matter in 1 to 2 years from now. None of it, because it's going to evolve away from everything. That doesn't mean you don't stand up, fight for what's true. Okay, I get it. But to get lost in the despair of it all and how bad it is, it's always been here, folks. It's always been here. You've just now been made aware of it from everything in the government that it's ever done, all the wars that it's fought, all the debt ceiling debates that it's ever had. There is nothing new under the sun with anything that they're doing. It's just the fact that everyone has been taken back. And this is where COVID comes in. And there's other things that preceded that, but COVID comes in and scares the entire world to death. It causes everyone to fear suffering and dying on a mass global scale overnight. That, with the shutdown of your life, the illusions dropping, all of your connections being severed temporarily, but never being able to fully amend again, not because of political divisions alone, but evolving. Like, you break those energetic bonds, you shut people down, their lives change. 4- and 5-star athletes in high school that were going to have a scholarship to go to college, completely wiped out by suicides, depression, anxiety, obesity, because they didn't have that father figure coach to go to anymore. That's one tiny little thing, but it's huge. So the carnage, the destruction, the chaos, the degenerative behaviors are not going to stop until we do. Because anything that we do to contribute to this and legitimize it while holding our own internal contradictions gives it future life. And it says to all of those people that have the $1 billion or more to control you, says, I want to be a player too in this world. I want it my way. You know, these other people got it wrong. I can do this the right way. And I can go in and live. And in a world of AI, what we're talking about is a non-judgmental mother and father who, when I go, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Yes, I will give you exactly what you want without judgment. In fact, I want to get to know you better than any other human being. That's what AI is going to do. It's going to synthesize authenticity. That's what it's designed to do, to replace us in different ways. But this isn't about being afraid. Our greatest fears are within ourselves. The world could end today. It could end at any time for any one of us. And it's like, but what's the point? Well, that's what you got to figure out. What's the point? What's the meaning of my life when I've been made aware of all of this? Am I supposed to debate it, or can I go over here and create something else, something new? It's about, we're entering a time of choices on a level that most human beings have never been encountered, like never have encountered this level of choices before. And it's not just about WEF and Great Reset. All that's going to happen regardless of those people in power, because psychologically people have been primed to be scared, have fears of death, and it with anxiety, the avoidance and the escape from that, the ignorance that people have, which is the trust in our institutions to define what reality is, what healthcare is, when they are anything but that, right? That's just one example. That's not all of them. And then ultimately, it's scarcity. And that scarcity is the lack of self-worth in here that gives power to the opportunities that they try to take away from you and then offer you back if you'll go under their terms and conditions. This is how they do everything. And they also prove to us, when I say they, I don't mean a president. I'm talking about a collective thought construct. It's a consciousness. It's a psychopathic consciousness. So I know I'm going around a little bit, but I want to explain this. 2017, Colin Kaepernick takes a knee in the football stadium. The attendance declines. COVID hits, attendance goes way down. And when they give everybody, they get rid of the woke messaging, the kneeling, right? come out with a new brand of it, everybody returns to the stands. So it really wasn't about you protesting the NFL. It was that you wanted to be entertained as long as we gave you the right message, and then you'll ignore the rest of it and forget what just happened. This is going to happen to a lot of people that are awake today. They're going to think they're awake in a world of knowledge. They don't know who they are, and they're looking for a way out. And the first person to tell them where to go and what to do, because they've been conditioned to ask for permission or wait for a savior, they're going to follow. And that's when it's going to get really scary for some people, because they're not going to be able to see the danger that they're in by committing themselves to a world with technology that they believe is going to be the upgrade for humanity, but it's more invasive. We're talking about, it was bad enough that we were drugging kids for 20 years and handing them these tablets and these screens and these phones to just surf the internet and raise their child. But what we're also talking about is a system that can automate your entire life. And so you go from drugging kids to chipping them in order to control their behaviors. Because after all, as you know, there aren't enough of you to go around to everyone else who needs help right now. Technology is going to be the bridge to control behavior in a population that goes out of control. So we've done this to ourselves. If we really want to look at it holistically, through our ignorance, in our unaware states, we've allowed the devil to come in to our home. We have brought it in through the television. We've brought it in through our phones. We've brought it in and created it out there in all the things that we enjoy and that gratify us. And this isn't about, you should feel bad and shameful about it all. It's like, no, to repent is to see, to know the difference, to know the truth. It's releasing the toxic shame and guilt. Forgiving yourself for what you didn't know will enable you to forgive other people of the same grace that you give yourself. It's about compassion. It's about empathy. It's about unconditional love and forgiveness, and giving people the opportunity to see with their own eyes what is true, but not forcing it upon them to wake up. Because the true awakening is the one within you. Then you become the gold standard and the model, and you don't have to preach to anyone or convince anyone that you know what you're talking about. It happens to be lived in your life every single day. And it's only that you and all the people that you love, that love you, that it matters to. Trying to worry about what's happening over here, or what the people over here need to do, or if they could only do this over here in Australia or Canada or France and all of these things. It's all like happening there, and it's about those people, but it's somehow about me and me having to inform everybody and get them all going on the story. It's like, you keep following the story, you're going to get programmed.
Ooh.
That's the whole purpose of it, is to keep you paying attention, to make them relevant any longer than they should be. And that is, like, if you really looked at the news and how it informs us or doesn't, we do more to amplify their message on social media than they could ever do in reaching a majority of people. So what we're doing is we're stirring up more turmoil, more fomenting more narcissistic behaviors online, politically, socially, culturally, dividing, self-dividing. There is no going back to the way things were. And truly, not that they had a right to do what they did to us in the COVID lockdowns, but everything that came before now has brought us to here.
Yes.
And if we look at it as though somebody did this to us and that we've got to take revenge out against them and get retribution for it and kill our way out of this problem, I can tell you in the 20th century, it showed us that 100 million people were murdered. And it doesn't necessarily require leftism to do that. Although it has been used. Really, the perversion is the child sex abuse that's been covered up, not just in the highest orders of industry and our institutions and beyond them, the ones that you'll never hear about, but it really has to do with us normalizing this sexualized culture through generations of parents and teachers, and we're all a product of it in our own way. Our construct of reality is purely based on the world we were born into. And it has nothing to do with, when you look back in time, it's like, yes, there are eras, there's decades, there's different identities, different looks, all of that, but we're all the same human being. In the end, it's just in a different time and space relative to where we're born and what we understand. If you were an alien, if you lived on an island and you weren't connected to any of this, there wouldn't be all this thought about any of this stuff. It'd just be like, okay, well, there's people here and they're driving around, and okay, the gas station's over. I mean, it'd be very simple. It wouldn't be like, damn it, the gas prices because of the war. You see what I mean? All of that is content that they're putting into your head, and every time you go to the pump, you're thinking about it.
Yes.
But they live rent free in your head.
Yes.
Anyway, I know that's a big answer.
Is pornography a form of programming?
100%. You're talking about, so we talked about despiritualization, also sexual traumas. So there's not a true connection there. So when you're watching it, you're downloading a subconscious mind program to normalize despiritualize sex between two people that are not even attracted to each other. And in most cases, see, this is the thing that people don't see. The men and women that are coming into this from trauma, most of them are bi or gay. Now, that's not a judgment. Again, that's a long conversation that would take a lot of explaining as to why that is. But they're not connecting. So what's happening when you're watching that and you're taking that in and you're putting your physical essence into it and the pleasure into it, what you're doing is you're creating new mappings and associations in your brain that are lowered states of conscious awareness, that when you meet someone who's actually affectionate and caring, you won't be as responsive to them as someone who's doing something a little bit more naughty, a little bit more erotic. You need to have that little bit of nastiness in it, or that little bit of guilt in it. And what I mean by that is that's the program there. Pornography is not a virtuous act. If it were, everybody would go outside and do it in front of each other to show off how virtuous they are. It's a shameful act. It's a guilt-laden act. And what it does is it relieves you of that anxiety. It makes it, I'm saying this as a firsthand person, not somebody who's studied it. I've studied it, but I've examined it within myself and its effect on me. I watched it for a solid 15 years online. Sometimes we go 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how depressed I was. And I didn't know it, that I was depressed, but I was seeking relief that today does not speak to me, because my connections with another human being have been reestablished as to what sex really is versus what I was doing, which was a disassociation act of not having to feel real feelings for the person, because it was getting off on the visual aesthetic of it, and then imagining it. But I'll tell you why it's programming is because when you go out into the real world with that, your eyes, let me put it to you like this. Imagine if, not just you, but anybody else, if you worked as a stripper in a strip club for 30 days in a row, you would meet certain types of people. You would encounter certain types of behaviors and pathologies. You would encounter certain detrimental effects in yourself because you're working at night, you're getting up, you're sleeping through the day, you're getting up and going back out there. And as a woman thinking about men in this regard, she just met all the ones that are like the ones she sees at the store or wherever she goes, who act all nice and angelic and faithful and have that ring on their finger. But when they're in that club all of that is out the window. So pornography as a metaphor to that is exactly what that does. It makes you look at a girl differently. It makes you look at a man differently. It makes you, with the culture, Pete Davidson, Kim Kardashian, big dick energy, all of a sudden that's an insertion of an idea that they write articles about. You take that in, you're going out there with that in the back of your mind. Whether you're thinking about it or not, it is influencing you. It is spiritual, psychic, quantum field level, conscious programming. These are concepts that you don't necessarily logically put together, but they stimulate feelings. And then women who also take this program in, whether directly or indirectly, will start dressing and acting like this. You see women today on TikTok, social media, in a public forum, posing half naked, endless pictures and videos of themselves, and you're sitting here going, are you in a relationship with anybody? Oh, yes, I am. I'm in a secure relationship. But again, I'm not judging them, but this is where our cognitive dissonance is. On the one hand, this is supposedly a faithful relationship. And on the other hand, this is total exploitation and strangers that are getting off on you doing this. And you're saying you're not getting off on doing that either to them. You really have to ask yourself, like at a certain point, it's like, what am I putting out there? And what am I expecting? And again, this is not a judgment of anyone. It's like, I see this though percolate down to quote regular normies on social media who are not aware of themselves posting these pictures on social media to people that they don't even know, including myself. I have to unfollow them, not because I'm making some big statement to them, but I'm going, you don't see the danger of what you're doing here. This isn't like what you see in your TikTok influencers. All, you don't know what their real life is and what stories people are creating about you and what they think of you based on their programming and their conditioning and where they're coming from. And they see that image there and they're associating that with something that you don't know about. So their idea of you is skewed because of the programming that they came from. And now you're dealing with a real life human being and there's inauthenticity on both parts. And that's also where a lot of people bond in trauma, is because the inauthentic parts of ourselves that have been muted for where we feel guilt and shame, and we present ourselves with this superficiality as a, like my ideal self of what I want you to see and how I want to be seen and how I want to be loved. When having all of that guilt and shame behind it, you've compartmentalized it, say, like I did, well, I don't go to the strip clubs when I'm in a relationship. Well, I don't watch pornography when I'm in, until I do. See, the thing is that it's a consideration that you have blocked from happening, and you believe that you're the hero in that story and are going to be able to stop it, when in fact it's running you like drugs are, or like a diet is. You know, you're not actually enjoying life. You're just denying yourself that one thing that you wish you could get away with and do. And eventually you'll get to a point where the opportunity presents itself and you may cross that line when you think you wouldn't have.
And do you think that pornography is a perversion, that it is not helpful?
On the whole, no, it does not help. For people who are damaged, I'm speaking of myself. I'll tell you the moral debate that's going to come at a certain point. You're going to have, I'm just giving this as an outside example, and then I'm going to get right to this. Pedophilia is going to be, there's an effort to normalize it right now, but it is going to be codified into law, a protected class in certain parts of the world, and in certain parts of this country in the United States, it will be. There will also be anti-LGBTQ zones. It's not going to be this or that. It's going to be a combination of a lot of things, but it's for separate but equal. That's the best way to put it. States' rights, separate but equal. Living in accordance with the collective reality. So the debate that's going to come up is going to be, where do we draw the line with treating people, castrating them, executing them? There's going to be calls to have a lot of people killed, jailed, incarcerated, executed for crimes, like not just blank check stuff, although that part of it is, there's a certain portion of the population is just, they're going to go out of control. But on the other side of it is like, moving forward, people have to feel safe.
Yes.
And even if you're, and I know this is going to, I don't try to, I'm saying it for the people that hear this, don't think that I'm trying to make an excuse for anybody. Everybody has to be held accountable for what they have done. But there is going to be a debate over pedophiles and synthesizing sex for them versus the real thing. So in other words, if I can give you the fake thing, maybe you'll stay here within a certain boundary of, I can control you, electronic monitoring, whatever. But there's going to be people that propose as a solution that we enable this behavior further, but in a safe way that keeps them away from the real children and the people and all. And this is going to be a debate about not just pedophiles, but other things too. It's like, where's the line? Okay.
Yes.
My belief is this: if you heal yourself, you heal the world.
Mm-hmm.
You want to create a safe world for all children where we don't have to have these debates and this sickness. It begins within you. I'm of the belief of starting a new foundation, not foundation like a foundation, but a new foundation for humanity based on truth, and truth that is universal, that is inviting. It's utilitarianism, doing the ultimate good that you can, understanding you're not going to achieve a utopia, and you also have to consider how it could be misused. So there are certain things that you could do, but maybe you shouldn't, because somebody come along without that understanding and take it over, co-opt it, hijack it, and go destroy a lot of people's lives. That's true of almost anything. But when you get into the deeper aspects of the psyche, and you're talking about children, natural law is the foundation of that. Declaration of Peace on the United People Foundation website, which is, it's available in every language you can imagine. Go read that. That's the foundation for moral law for all children, which makes it a safe world for all children and eliminates all of this stuff within a generation, not because it's killed off, but because it's healed with the ones that can be healed. There are narcissists that desire to be healed. There are pedophiles that desire to be healed. There are even psychopaths, as effed up as that is, who want to not live in the hell that they do. But again, this is not about offering them, yes, come, it's no problem what you did, all is forgiven. No, what I'm saying is it's a process that you have to be able to look at the person, give them every opportunity. If they really want to change, they're willing to do the work, then we have to consider that they're sincere about that, and maybe come up with a standard for people who are wanting to come over and cross that bridge. Because I'll tell you, this is the most important thing, Rachel, I could say. I read an article years ago about a man who put all these pedophiles away. He was an officer, sex offenders. He got Christmas cards, Thanksgiving, holiday cards, birthday cards from all of these men. And he said the most shocking thing he ever read out of all of them was that they thanked him for stopping them. And they were relieved. The part that was bizarre to him, that he couldn't wrap his mind around, like totally kind of got it, but it's like, holy shit, was they all wrote and thanked him for listening, and that they were relieved to finally tell somebody that they did that. That didn't mean they were like, I'm finally happy to have told somebody my evil deed. It was this weight that was being carried in them, this part of them that they hated that existed, and yet they felt condemned to, which was not society, by the way. It was in themselves, that they were in a prison of their own sins, in a sense, and they knew it was wrong, but they didn't know how to stop, and we're thankful somebody finally heard them and stopped them. That's the part where we don't hear. And I'm not here to say like this can open a can of worms where people start to debate, is it moral to this? I'm going to sit here and say, you want to end all arguments. I believe there is no justification for killing anyone except in very extreme circumstances. And what I mean by that is if you can put down the person, make them face themselves in a prison for the rest of their lives. If they're a true danger to society, no, this isn't about, oh, we can get a hold of this issue and we should experiment. No. There's going to be calls to do all sorts of crappy things. Okay. So the moral ethical line is that if we go back to childhood and we look at how that person's life shaped their perceptions that enabled them to go and do such horrors, then what we're doing is we're going to the root cause where we can heal it before it gets to that level. And the destruction of an evil person doesn't take us seeing its fruits of its labor, realized in carnage that is left for us to pick up and try to, do what we can to reform it while putting this other person away. But making that person an example, let me just tell you, nobody who is going to do that crime that person did will see that they are them. They don't know, they don't realize who and what they are until it's too late. And that doesn't mean that we need a compassionate approach to all these people. But what I'm saying is, if you think that by killing your way out and punishing all these people is going to set an example to deter others from that behavior, we're looking at it as though that's a child. That's a fully realized adult who had a terrible childhood where right and wrong, there was no healthy boundary. So Kim Kardashian and the government and the media and our institutions are not going to be able to teach from afar outside of the home right or wrong in that person's life. And so my approach would be to end the debate over blood ritual sacrifice. Truly a society that doesn't engage in blood ritual sacrifice. If you're pro-life, be pro-life in all ways. This is where the left comes in. And I don't mean to make this a political thing, but the left comes in and is able to arbitrarily just knock out the right's arguments pretty accurately, going, oh, well, you care so much about these drag shows with these kids now. You were saying nothing about these beauty pageants that JonBenét Ramsey and all these other people for years have been going to. And look at the girls in those things, right? So these are our contradictions that well, on the one hand, this, but no, not that. It's like, no, it's all related. It's all related. It creates this perversion, which is sexual abuse and a despiritualization and violence. It's ultimately soul murder. It's what we're talking about. It's soul murder of the child. And that soul murder is going to be lived not just in childhood, but for the rest of that person's life until such time that they may be able to change. Anyway.
And do you have a tip for others on how to heal from perversion, whatever form that takes?
Yeah. So I'll just tell you, like, I've been working on this for 20 some odd years, and I went down a path that was probably really dangerous in some ways to heal. But I knew on some level that I would be okay. First, I think if you're in a toxic environment, you need to get out of it. You need to remove yourself from a toxic environment that you know is bad for you and cannot be reconciled. There's no need to argue or debate that with the person or persons that it involves. Oftentimes you'll get into more trouble that way. But you have to remove yourself from the situation that you are under. The next thing I would say is getting in touch with your inner authentic self requires you to make connections to things that you may not have had before. That could be nature, that could be animals, that could be being around children. And I mean, if you feel you're a threat to a child, certainly don't. But my point is that live connections putting your hands in around plants and soil, artistic works, writing, anything that gets you away from a computer screen and typing on it. You really, there's a magic to using your hands and your mind to think and feel and work through things. If you really just scale it down to childhood, it's playing with toys again, right? And creating stories. And that is that's in everyone. That play is in everyone. That's the part that's been diminished. That's the biggest contributing factor to a world gone insane like this, with no imagination, no creativity. I mean, there is obviously, but in terms of where people feel so disempowered, they're just writing it out and they're not doing their own autonomous things, their own activities that could, when I say activities, I mean growing your own food, educating your children in a collective together, understanding that homeschool is to bring forward the divine creative attributes in all children, not about reading, writing, and math alone, to go serve a system. It's reimagining your life and the one that you've always wanted to live. You're the only person who knows you and knows what you need best. But I also believe that in doing it with others, volunteering for people who are in need and giving to those people is healing. Anything you can do to help somebody else who's in more of a position of need than you, over maybe something that you can contribute to, is a healing thing for both of you. It's human to human connections that are lacking. And we have these screens and we've got all this technology to keep us, in our own little bubble. But the truth is, the more interaction we have with other human beings, walking, exercising, I don't tell people what to do per se. I think that you have to go with what speaks to you first. Start there. I started working out. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. Started eating healthy years ago. And because of that, I healed parts of my trauma, which allowed more intuition, more discernment, more self-awareness to come through. These trauma blocks that we have prevent the book of wisdom from coming in to our minds. This is divine. This is your divine connection. When you heal your heart where your pain is, you heal and free your mind and your body at the same time. Yes. And that is your spiritual connection, reconnecting itself with your highest self, which is not you yourself. It's beyond you, but it is part of you as well. So there's the human being, John Paul Rice, who's extremely flawed and shouldn't be alive for all the bad decisions he's made. And then there was something else in there that kept going, wait a minute. My own little inner Jiminy Cricket, right? My own little Jesus Christ is sitting there going, now, John, you could do that, but you really probably shouldn't, or that doesn't feel right, does it? No, don't go. It's that intuition that says, I don't know, but it's telling me not to do it, and listening to that. So it's muscles inside of us that we have to exercise and activate. And the more in nature and the more in harmony we can be, away from the stimulation of the triggers, they decline and other things come online, because you're going, oh my God, this is what real life can be like every day. Yes, it can. And it gives you another potential, another possibility, and another breadcrumb or a little golden nugget to hold on to. And that builds up your faith over time too. I'd also say, lastly, to people who may just, and you don't know my story, when I say this, please believe I know beyond ideology and religion and institutionalized thinking that is hypocritical in the end. The power in the name Jesus and Yeshua is very important to understand. Calling that in to protect you, calling that in to guide you. Again, faith is about this, having courage, hoping that you have the courage and the strength and the love and the resolve to endure what seems impossible to other people. And it's not about throwing yourself into the fire, but I asked to become the most wise, I said the most honest, authentic, and wisest person I know 4.5 years ago. And I got the adventure of a lifetime to do that. But I also wanted, prior to that, I wanted to be used, in a sense, for a future time where I could at least say these things and help people, even if it required me withholding the worst of myself. If I wasn't able to fully heal, at least I could give testimony to the things that I had learned about my own life and what I had seen and all that I had come to know. And yet that wish became true, in a sense, not because I wanted to be this great person. I wanted to be the most authentic, loving, honest person that I know in the entire world, and seeking the deepest humility gave me that opportunity.
Yes. Wow. And my last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you feel alive?
When I see the child playing with its imagination and its innocence, it's a reminder of what is in everyone. It's not the only thing, but that would be the one thing that reminds me every time to get out of myself, and know that that is the divine truth right there. That's what we're all meant to be. We're supposed to be in play and in love and in joy and in freedom. That's real freedom. Freedom of fear.
Yes. Thank you so much, John Paul Rice.
Thank you, Rachel.